She was the most glamorous woman in Hollywood, yet she scraped leftover food under her bedsheets, and she wasn't alone. Behind the studio polish, some of cinema's brightest stars carried scents the cameras couldn't capture, and the studios scrambled to cover. Marilyn Monroe, the mattress smelled like dinner. She was the ultimate icon of beauty and seduction, but Marilyn Monroe's hygiene was far from glamorous. According to those who worked closely with her, Monroe had a habit of scraping leftover food under her bedsheets after eating in bed, then sleeping right on top of it. Maids reportedly quit over the mess, unable to handle the piles of dirty dishes, soiled clothing, and the lingering odor in her home. Biographers even claim Gable refused to date her because of her personal habits. Some believe these behaviors were tied to deeper struggles. Monroe battled anxiety, depression, and chronic health issues like irritable bowel syndrome. Still, the rumors stuck. Behind the glowing smile and silk dresses was someone quietly unraveling. The studios worked overtime to preserve her image, but off-camera, Marilyn was living in chaos. And as the spotlight brightened, so did the smell behind the stardom. But she wasn't the only one. Errol Flynn, a swashbuckler who stopped showering. Errol Flynn was once the very picture of rugged charm, but by the end of his life, the only thing clinging to him more tightly than scandal was the smell. When he showed up in Vancouver late in his career, fans were shocked, bloated, disheveled, and wearing the same stained clothes for days. Those who crossed paths with him recalled a pungent odor and an attitude that hygiene was beneath him. Some speculated he believed bathing was too fussy, maybe even unmanly. While the studios worked hard to maintain his dashing reputation, the truth began leaking out years after his death. Memoirs, interviews, and tell-all books revealed how far Flynn had fallen, drifting from cheap film sets to late-night parties, rarely touching soap or water. The swashbuckling hero may have ruled the screen, but off-set, he reeked of a man who'd stopped caring. And Hollywood kept the secret for a while. Jean Harlow, a scent. Hollywood couldn't hide Jean Harlow was the original blonde bombshell, a luminous star whose presence lit up the screen. But those who got too close reportedly noticed something far less glamorous. Harlow suffered from chronic kidney disease, specifically nephritis, which caused her body to emit a strong ammonia-like odor. In an era with limited treatment options, the buildup of toxins created a scent that even heavy perfumes couldn't mask. Makeup artists and co-stars whispered about it behind closed doors, while MGM scrambled to protect her image. They scheduled brief appearances, flooded press with positive coverage, and never acknowledged the issue publicly. Despite her beauty, charm, and professionalism, the rumors persisted, and the scent reportedly did too. Jean did everything she could to hide it, bathing frequently and applying perfume liberally, but her illness gave her little chance. It was a heartbreaking case where health and hygiene collided, one that Hollywood tried to bury beneath its golden sheen. Gable, the breath that nearly tanked a classic. Gable had the charm, the swagger, and the face that defined an era, but off-camera, insiders say his breath was hard to stomach. During the filming of Gone with the Wind, whispers began spreading on set. Gable's breath was so bad, co-star Vivien Leigh reportedly complained about the kissing scenes. The root of it? Gable had lost several teeth and wore poorly fitted dentures, which combined with the era's lacking dental technology, created a lingering odor that no amount of mints could mask. Crew members kept quiet. No one dared confront the king of Hollywood. But behind the scenes, it became one of those stories everyone knew, but never said aloud. The studio never acknowledged it, and fan magazines certainly didn't touch it. Yet the tale lived on in memoirs and quiet conversations, turning Gable's golden smile into one of the industry's most whispered about secrets. And it only got worse from there. Frances Farmer, when stardom turned sour. Frances Farmer was once hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising talents, but behind the screen, her life spiraled into tragedy, and her hygiene was an early sign of that unraveling. As her mental health deteriorated, so did her self-care. Crew members recalled her arriving to set disheveled, wearing the same outfit for days, and carrying a smell that lingered long after she left the room. It wasn't laziness. It was a woman overwhelmed by an industry that demanded perfection while offering no compassion. At the time, these details were kept quiet. The stigma surrounding mental illness made them too dangerous to share. But years later, in memoirs and interviews, the truth surfaced. Farmer wasn't just battling the studios. She was fighting herself. The glamour faded, the cameras stopped rolling, and the smell of suffering remained. Her story became a haunting reminder that fame often masks a deeper, darker reality, and Frances wasn't alone. Wallace Beery, the gruff star who carried his scent to set. Wallace Beery was never known for charm or polish. In fact, he built his career on playing gruff, rough-around-the-edges characters. But according to longtime studio crew, that same roughness extended well beyond the screen. Beery reportedly had a strong, lingering body odor that clung to him after long days on set, a mix of sweat, alcohol, and whatever he'd had for lunch. He wasn't unhygienic in the extreme, just indifferent. Showers weren't a daily habit, and he wasn't shy about showing up to set wearing the same unwashed costume shirt from the day before. Colleagues claimed you could smell him before you saw him, especially in the summer heat under studio lights. Still, he was a reliable box office draw, and no one dared bring it up while cameras rolled. The odor wasn't scandalous enough for headlines, but for those who worked with him, it became part of the Wallace Beery experience. And he wasn't the last. Tallulah Bankhead, the diva who dismissed soap. Tallulah Bankhead was a whirlwind of wit, scandal, and rebellion. One of the few stars who lived as outrageously off-screen as she did on it. Known for her sharp tongue and wild parties, Bankhead openly scoffed at what she considered fussy habits like regular bathing or grooming. She famously quipped that she saw no reason to waste time on soap and water when there were far more exciting things to do. Behind the scenes, whispers circulated about the odor that clung to her dressing room and followed her from set to soiree. Unlike male stars who were gently teased for similar lapses, Bankhead's hygiene was an open secret few dared question while she was alive. Her raw charisma and towering presence kept the public enchanted, even as crew members quietly swapped stories. Long after her heyday, former colleagues finally spoke up, revealing a legend whose scent lingered almost as much as her legacy. W.C. Fields, the aroma of alcohol and applause. W.C. Fields was one of the most iconic comedic voices of early Hollywood, known for his boozy drawl and grumpy charm. But that slurred wit wasn't just an act. Fields was a notorious drinker, and the scent of alcohol practically seeped from his pores. Co-stars and crew quietly recalled dreading scenes that required close proximity, as the smell of stale liquor, sweat, and day-old clothes became part of his off-screen presence. He rarely bothered with morning showers after long nights of heavy drinking, and by midday, the stench was unmistakable. Still, he was a box office draw, and the studios had no interest in revealing the man behind the musk. It wasn't until decades later, when Hollywood veterans began sharing their behind-the-scenes stories, that Fields' legendary odor became part of his legacy. For those who had to stand next to him, the laughs came with a breath-holding cost, and it didn't end there. Peter Lorre, smoke, stress, and a lingering cloud. Peter Lorre's haunting voice and unsettling gaze made him a staple in Hollywood noir, but behind the camera, he carried a scent that clung as tightly as his most famous roles. Lorre was a relentless chain smoker, puffing away between takes, through rehearsals, and even during conversations. Colleagues described the cloud of stale tobacco that followed him into every room, settling into his clothes, hair, and skin like a second costume. Add in mounting health issues and stress, and Lorre's hygiene reportedly slipped even further. Some claimed showers weren't exactly part of his daily routine. While no scandal ever broke, the whispers existed in quiet memoirs and rare interviews. Charles Laughton, the man who wore his role for days. Charles Laughton was a master of transformation. On screen, he could become anyone. But off-screen, some claimed he didn't always shed the character or the makeup. One story from Hollywood insider Scotty Bowers described Laughton arriving at a party still caked in heavy stage makeup from a recent shoot. Odd but forgivable, until he showed up 4 days later, looking exactly the same. Same clothes, same thick grease paint, same unmistakable smell of old cosmetics and sweat. When asked if he was still filming, Laughton reportedly smiled and replied, "Most observant of you, dear boy," before turning away without further explanation. Was it forgetfulness, defiance, or eccentric pride? No one knew for sure. It never made headlines. Laughton was a respected actor, and the studio PR machines kept those quirks buried. But among those who saw it firsthand, his peculiar appearance and the scent that followed, became one of old Hollywood's strangest, smelliest legends. Fame may have lit their faces, but it couldn't mask the truth behind the scenes. These stars dazzled on screen while leaving a different impression off it, one the studios fought hard to hide. Because in Hollywood's golden age, image was everything, even when the smell told another story.